Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. UNN is the official news channel for CARE, which stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. I'm getting my voice back. Can you tell? I've been a little bit under the weather for it's almost 2 weeks now, but I'm going to squeak through this podcast episode, and then hopefully by Wednesday I will be completely better. But if you're not familiar with us, UNN, we talk about the real news, and we have a newscast that's released through our online distribution platform every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you want more information on that, you can check us out at unitednetwork.tv. On this podcast, we highlight some of the stories that we talk about on our newscast, and that includes local stories from our field messengers. We talk about the new Earth and where our planet is going. We discuss regional stories that impact the people, and then we also have a world situation report to really clear through all the clutter of the news headlines out there and really let you know what is actually happening right now. Because mainstream media and alternative media, they're really two sides of the same coin. You're not really getting the truth with alternative media either. Everything is controlled. So our world situation report breaks this down, this stuff down. And a lot of times we are saying, okay, here's what alternative media is saying, and that's not really true. Here's the real story. Mainstream media hardly ever gets anything right, but usually alternative media gives you some version of the truth, but it's not for the right reason, as we will find out in today's World Situation Report. We've got a great example of that. We have access to the highest security clearance on the planet. It's called the Alpha System, and that is why we know what we know. And the longer you listen, the more we talk about the Alpha System and its capabilities. The information we share on this newscast or on this podcast may be surprising to you, but that's okay. Stick with us. A lot of people are just learning this stuff, and there's no shame in that. We have literally been lied to for our entire lives and for a very long time when you look at the history of humanity. So now the truth is starting to come out, and we always encourage you to do your own research. Just because I say something or someone else that's on the show, like Kim from the Office of the Guardian, if we say something, don't just believe us, do some sort of research, because usually there are remnants of whatever it is we're talking about. It's already out there on the internet somehow. Like, we update you on the situation, but if we talk about a particular group, usually you can dig up some information about that group and draw your own conclusions. And as I always say in this podcast, trust your instinct when it comes to this stuff. You have what I call a built-in lie detector built into your body. It is called discernment, and we have to start relying on our own discernment to know what is real and what is fake. Because if you're just looking at what's out there now and what's being promoted, you're going to be thoroughly confused, okay? But with everything, think critically and ask questions. All right, here's the rundown for Monday, December 4th, 2023. In our Field Messenger reports, which is kind of like our local news section of all of our newscasts, we have a couple different stories. Now, if you haven't heard of our field messengers before, these are everyday people just like you who are telling us what's happening in their community. We do not trust what mainstream media is saying. Again, we do not trust what alternative media is saying. A lot of times they're focused on kind of the big picture. So when it comes to what's happening in our local communities, we rely on you to give us that information, and we call those people our field messengers. If you want more information on how to become a field messenger and some of the benefits associated with that, you can go to the news section of our website, which is unitednetwork.news, and there is a heading that says field messengers, so just click on that and you can get all the information you need. So as I mentioned, we have two field messenger reports on today's newscast. One is called Rite of Passage, and Agwamba Obasi from Southeast Nigeria, he's reported several times for us. This is more of a visual story, so bear with me, okay? But he shows us the Ipu Ogu ceremony for this small village. And this is a very important ceremony. This is for young men traditionally. It's usually young men, but it signifies their transition to adulthood. And there's actually no age limit. So if someone kind of comes in or wants to have some sort of influence over the village, they have to go through this ceremony. He gives the example, I believe, of a politician that wanted to do something and no one would listen because they haven't been through this ceremony. And so there's no age limit, but you are not considered a fully fledged adult or worthy of making some big decisions until you go through this ceremony, and there's multiple stages. So what he was showing us today, it was kind of like a dance, and then people were kind of cheering them on, but it was stage 1 of 3. And then he said the final stage won't be completed until next year. So this is a process. But I always find it so interesting about how other cultures do these rite of passage ceremonies. We don't really have anything like that in the U.S., but I think it's beautiful, and it obviously highlights their culture and the closeness between the generations. So I think it's amazing. Our next story has to do with a water tower, again in southeast Nigeria, but it's a different field messenger. Chukwudi Kingsley is the messenger on this, and he's talking about, I believe he's done a couple reports, or at least we've had several reports of water challenges in various parts of the world. And in southeast Nigeria, in this particular village, there was a member of the community, I believe he said it was a man, who basically took matters into his own hands, which is something that we encourage people to do. Not like in a negative way, not like to fight something or whatever, but to make a positive difference in your community. Most things, humans are extremely resourceful. And so when a problem occurs, or when you see a problem in your community, usually there's a lot that you can do even without funding to be able to improve the situation. And this is what this man did. Obviously, this person had some money because what he did, would cost a significant amount of money. But he started this in 2021. And what he did is he created these, I'll call them like water towers, if you will. And I believe there's reservoir tanks. That's what he called them. And they're spread out. I believe there's 2 of them within the community. And then he created all these water taps that somehow connect into these tanks, which is pretty amazing because in the video, I think he showed us like 5 or 6 different water taps. And it's not just for that community, but other people from other villages utilize it. So it's helping so many people. And these reservoir tanks, they're huge. I was really surprised. This is why I think it probably costs, pretty penny to get this stuff done. And in fact, there's even solar panels on the very top to pump the water. So apparently this area, they don't get a lot of government powered electricity. So you really have to think about, okay, great, you've got these reservoir tanks, but then how is the water going to be pumped out to go into these water taps? So it's just incredible what one person has done. And I'm sure this person had a lot of help as well. But again, it's the power of coming together, recognizing that something needs to be done, and coming together for a solution. And anybody can do this. Now let's talk about the new Earth. This is a segment of our newscast, and, again, talking about it here on the podcast, where we get a little bit creative and we get you guys thinking about how amazing our planet is going to be in the very near future. Because a lot of things have been withheld from us, a lot of information has been withheld, and we're trying to give that back to you as much as possible and share stories of success of people that are making a difference and really looking at the world in a different way, using different types of technologies and things like that. So I have an interview with Ara Wiseman. She's been on the show before. She is a nutritionist, and she gives us some tips about how to feel more energized. Because I don't know about you, but so many days, at the end of the day, I'm just totally wiped. I'm totally exhausted. And so Ara, since she is a nutritionist, talks a lot about things you can eat and, to give you more energy, things like that. But at the end, we also talk a little bit about grounding, which I thought was really interesting. So you want to check out that interview. We have a story about a hip hop granny. So we know that age is just a number. There are many beings out there that lived, hundreds and, hundreds of years old. They live to be hundreds and hundreds of years old, or maybe even thousands, really depending on how advanced the society is. So we know that age is really just a number, that there is something else that is holding humanity back. And we talk about that on the news, all these different programs and things that are being dismantled that, are basically holding us back from this life, that we intuitively have always wanted, that we've known is possible. But there were so many things, set up to, prevent that from happening. So this hip hop granny, she's 75 years old. Her name is Stephanie Walsh. She didn't start dancing until she was 30. But now I'm telling you what, she is living it up. She has all these videos out there. A lot of them have gone viral. And it's just a testament to what you can do. When you see her dance, obviously this is a visual story. When you see her dance, it just gives you so much inspiration. You want to dance right along with her. I mean, she looks like she's having the time of her life. All right, our next story is about shipping containers being turned into livable spaces. This is a very cost-effective and eco-friendly alternative to what we would call traditional housing. And there's a lot of things that you can do with these shipping containers. So you guys know what I'm talking about, right? They look like long metal containers. And these can be stacked, they can be cut, they can be welded to create multi-level homes. So you're not just limited with the, rectangle shape. You can do a lot of really interesting things. You can even combine it with traditional building materials so you can kind of have a hybrid house. And the reason we're talking about this is because there's so many of these containers that have been decommissioned globally. 14 million containers have been decommissioned around this planet. So what are we going to do with it, right? You're just going to recycle it? I mean, it's already a structure in itself. We talk all the time about affordable housing that is needed for people in need, homeless individuals, and things like that. So again, we're trying to think about what's already been created. How quickly can we get something like this up and running and help the people on this planet? And our final story is about mushroom fabric. Have you ever heard of fabrics being made out of mushrooms? Personally, I'm a big fan of mushrooms. I like to eat them. And let me tell you what, I probably wear them too. So this is a vegan leather alternative, and it's incredible. It does not harm the environment or animals. Obviously, getting the skin from an animal, that's going to harm the animal, right? And it's actually called Milo. So they don't call it mushroom leather or anything like that. It's called Milo. And you know how when you put on real leather, you know how it's like freezing, whether you're sitting on a couch or you're wearing a leather jacket? Well, Milo is warm to the touch. So you don't even have that kind of, I don't know. I view it kind of like a side effect or, kind of a downside of leather, right? It's always freezing. It also requires less space to produce it, less water. There are no harmful chemicals, which apparently there are in leather. So I've got a little history lesson in leather over the last couple days and learning more about this process. The mushrooms are actually grown in a vertical farm facility. So again, doesn't take up a lot of space. It's powered by renewable energy. So this is a really cool thing. It can be dyed, embossed, stitched together, just like leather. So who knows? In the future, we may not have leather jackets. We may have Milo jackets. Let's talk about regional news that is actually impacting people on this planet. So in China, there's a lot of borrowers that are defaulting on their loans. 8.54 million citizens, and they're fairly young, ages 18 to 59, are defaulting in rapid number. These numbers are up by 3 million since the last time they checked in early 2020. So this is related to COVID and the lockdowns, and we know that China had to deal with so much, right? So much during that, and it would prohibit people from working and a lot of crazy stuff over there. Well, China does not have any personal bankruptcy laws, but there are severe penalties if people default, including restrictions on consumer activities. Like they will not allow you to do certain things that average everyday people could do. They've got their facial recognition programs and all of that. So it's all tied into this bankruptcy as well. And it's really hitting the youth hard. Unemployment rates right now are peaking at 21.3%. And that was back in June. Obviously, people defaulting on their loans could be a nightmare for China's economy, and that's why we're doing this story. In Afghanistan, we have a story about artists and how they are struggling right now. They are facing a lot of different hardships under Taliban rule because despite what the Taliban originally said, they said that they weren't going to have as many restrictions, blah, 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 blah. That didn't really happen. In fact, the Taliban have banned all non-Islamic art. And this is having a devastating impact. It has forced the closure of art institutions, people destroying their own artwork and other people's artwork because they don't want to get in trouble. It has caused widespread self-censorship from artists. So instead of artists being able to create the art that they want, they have to do something that they think is acceptable or it's not going to get them in trouble. And like I said, a lot of people have destroyed their own artwork. They've gone into hiding. In fact, they've also tried to flee to other countries because how miserable would that be, right? But there's also issues with that because asylum seekers are facing really long waits and it's really difficult to get a visa. So obviously we want to see that improved in that area. The artists should not feel threatened for producing their artwork there. We have a story out of Slovenia, and this is actually a more positive story, and it's regarding COVID fines. So Slovenians who were fined for violating pandemic rules, so, wearing your mask and, being a good little slave, all that stuff, are now going to receive refunds. The government has decided to pay back $1.85 million from fines that were incurred between March of 2020 and March of 2022. And that's what they said. Let's see what they do. There's no additional information on how they plan to roll this out and timelines and things like that. But they're hoping that this rectifies this impression, a very accurate impression, that civilians have about government overreach. So I chalk that up as a win for now. Let's see what actually happens. And our final story in our regional news has to do with still the government, okay? But this is the government out of Brazil, Porto Alegre. And this is a small city council for the city in Brazil. They have passed an ordinance written entirely by AI, artificial intelligence. The legislation was related to water meter replacements, and it was drafted by ChatGPT. So there's been a lot of information in the news recently about ChatGPT. And they have completely written this ordinance. I don't know what they typed into Chat GPT, but they got a whole ordinance out of this. Now, here's the interesting thing. This proposal passed unanimously, and the city councilors who were voting on this were not even aware of the AI origin. So there's some controversy around this, right? Because these different chatbots, right, and the information that they provide, there has been reports of a lot of inaccuracies in general, anywhere between 3% to 27%. Like if you have it create something, there might be that many errors in whatever you created. So we don't have the details on how this was proofed and all this kind of stuff, but you are talking about a small city council, which is probably why they decided to use ChatGPT. They're probably shorthanded and like, hey, let the AI system write this for us. So there are some concerns about that. But the interesting thing is we're starting to see this used more and more. We've done stories about it being used in schools for, students to write papers and things like that. And now it's making it into politics as well. And now it's time for a world situation report. Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian, she comes on the news and she does this report for us, and she has access directly to the Alpha system, which is how we have this information. And Kimberly's update today, okay, guys, if you haven't been watching for a while, kind of hang on tight to your hats because this is going to get kind of out there as far as things that we've never been told, okay? So just hear us out. I always encourage you guys, do your own research afterward. The first thing is Kimberly giving us some more information about an earthquake that happened in the Philippines this weekend. We didn't report on this in the main news section, but I'm glad she touched on this because most of these earthquakes and quote unquote natural disasters that we're seeing are anything but natural. These are programs. And these programs are tied to AI systems and things like that that are meant to trigger, if things did not go the way that these horrible people who've been running our planet for a long time wanted them to go. Okay, so if we got too light or too positive, too much light came into this planet, it's kind of like a dead man switch. A lot of stuff would be triggered. So we've talked about a lot of these kind of things in the past. What happened in the Philippines is there was a woman that was posting on social media who claimed that she was connected to a group tied to the elementals. Okay, so the elements, right, of our planet. And she was kind of going off the rails because she said, you're not listening to us. You're not listening to us. More volcanoes and earthquakes and all these things are going to happen. Probably sound like a nut job, okay? But the Alpha system and the people that run this, they've found this information. Obviously, they have more information than the rest of us. And we're like, actually, she's not crazy. There's other things going on here. This was linked to 32 non-humans, okay, that were found. This was tied to an element of the elemental AI system. So again, there were a lot of these AI systems that were on our planet, and most of them were not for the benefit of humanity, and this was one of them. Now, we don't really know what was going on here, what their overall plan was, because she was saying, hey, you're not listening to us. But we are pretty sure that their end goal was to blow up the earth, which happens more often than you would think. So that's what happened with the earthquake in the Philippines. Now let's talk a little bit about what's happening over in Israel, okay, in Gaza. There has been an increase in attacks in Gaza. And Kim specifically wanted to talk about this because they're telling people one thing. They're telling people to do stuff that's only going to get them killed. Okay, so let's play the soundbite from Kim talking about the attacks in Gaza and how they're trying to manipulate the people, which is just going to cause them more harm.
On Saturday, there were enormous amounts of attacks happening in Gaza. And there was one particular, for lack of a better term, we'll call it a bomb, that killed over 1,000 people in one shot. Now, there's a reason for this, and this is the reason why I want to talk about this. It's not that it's not a real situation. We still have some rogue, crazy humans that think they're going to achieve an objective without a full understanding of what's going on at the time of the attack. And I would say this. One thing that is happening is they are dropping a lot of flyers to citizens of the Gaza Strip, telling them to go in this direction or in that direction. And what this is called is the creation of a kill hole. That's what it's called. What it means is they take a less dense population that is more spread out. They concentrate them into specific areas, and then they bomb that area, right, which then creates thousands of more deaths than if this was, more densely populated. So I will caution you, if you are in the area of Gaza or Israel, this is the type of attack that they are performing right now on all of you. So if you get these flyers, I would ignore them. I would spread out as far as possible, because if you don't, you're going to play right into what they're doing. There are no safe zones. There are no people they are interested in keeping alive in the Gaza Strip. They are still trying to achieve the Greater Israel Project, so I am cautioning you on that. There are some rogue people in the U.S. involved. There are some rogue people in the U.K. involved. There are definitely some rogue people in Israel involved. There are some Chinese involved. There are some Iranians involved, so be careful. I do know of another group, just like they did in Afghanistan in this area, tied to Blackwater, which is now called Frontier or whatever they're calling it these days, who are offering a safe passage and safe exit out of the Strip for $6,000 US, which is an awful lot of money and not a lot of money that people in the region can afford. So that started, of course. They have to always develop some money-making way when there's a war, and there's not a lot of money being made in said war. So they come in, they offer their services, and they are transporting people outside the area, most likely to Jordan and to other surrounding areas. But I will tell you a story. I'm going to repeat. For some of you, this is a repeated story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. In 2010, it's appropriate here. In 2010, I was in a foreign country, and I was having a conversation with a man who had a tattoo of a swastika between his thumb and his pointed finger. And this man explained to me, now this was in 2010, so this was quite a while ago. He explained to me that the goal was to clear out all of the people in the Middle East, either by death or by relocation. And this is what we're seeing happening now, and it's only beginning in the Gaza Strip if they are allowed, let's just say allowed, to continue. If this continues and they have their way, they will eliminate or move all of the citizens of the Middle East out of the region. Now, he explained to me at the time that this was all about oil, is what he said, control over the oil. Now, upon return to the United States after this trip, which lasted about 6 months, the Nancy Pelosi was actually running around with a $14 trillion oil contract, which was being proposed to several private military groups. Shortly thereafter, there were groups such as ISIS that came to be, and a number of other groups we have heard about, which were not Middle Eastern people for the most part, and they had the intention of participating in this. In military terms, they call this planting a ghost flag. Much like the colonists did way back in the day in the UK. They would come in, plant the UK flag, say, you're now part of the Commonwealth. This country belongs to us. Have a nice day. We're taking all your resources, live or die. We don't care, but you're now, citizens of the Commonwealth. Mm-hmm. And a similar situation was to take place in the Middle East. So we've learned a couple of things from me telling you this story. Number one, the Order of the Black Sun was involved, as the Nazis were in Order of the Black Sun creation. Possible regions of relocation were in southern Russia, in the Chechnya area, and also Egypt were discussed at the time. So everything we're seeing now is very similar to what's actually going on. But transporting people to Jordan is only going to require an additional transportation in the future if this continues, because they have no intention of stopping with Israel and the Gaza Strip. They are already trying to get Iraq involved. There are religious leaders that are the Walking Dead, such as Sistani in Iraq, that are talking about they're going to fight the Americans. They're fighting the Americans. And in reality, they're not fighting anybody except, let's say, against the citizens of Iraq, because they have an intention of bringing the country back into a hot war. Mm-hmm. The same will take place in Saudi Arabia. The same will take place in Iran. It will continue all the way through Afghanistan. And if they had their way, they claim in the face front to be offering large contracts to various parties for allowing the bombing of their citizens and allowing, yes, they are, heads of state are being promised large sums of money. Very large. They have been sold fake treasury notes, off-market treasury notes, off-ledger treasury notes, which don't technically exist, against in-ground assets in the United States and portions of ownership over the United States. when it's divided up and sliced up.
Wow.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I know this for a fact. The Kuwaitis have them, the Saudis have them, and so do the Jordanians have them. This is why they're all participating in this. They are going to own a piece of the United States. That is what they have been told. It gets deeper. So once this is achieved, there will be a singular currency issued for the Middle Eastern region, and there have been at least 3 to 4 countries that have been promised that they will be the controlling party over the currency that is backed by all of the in-ground oil in the region. So number one, all of the in-ground oil in the region was leveraged back in the 70s and early 80s. So that's not a thing. We're not doing that. Number two, just for all of you listening to this, depending on which country you're from, if you are from Saudi Arabia, you have been promised this position, the royal family of Saudi Arabia. If you are from Kuwait, and you are with the royal family of Kuwait, you have been promised this position. If you are in Jordan and you are the royal family of Jordan, you have also been promised this position as the comptroller of currency against all of the in-ground assets of the Middle East. Should you assist in this directive? And if you are from Iraq, Sistani, why are you fighting the Americans? You have just signed up to own a piece of America and to control all of the Middle East's currencies. And if you are Egypt, you have also been offered the same thing. So I'm not exactly sure how you're going to have 5 separate controllers over a singular currency to be issued by a singular nation.
Yeah.
But then again, these people never tell anybody the truth anyway, and everybody's participating. Now, I'm sure there's a reason why Frontier, aka former Blackwater, former Academy, is participating, probably because they're listening to the Chinese, and they're being promised they're going to be able to cash those treasury notes that they paid the men and everything else for their portion ownership over the United States as well. Very dirty trick, but I did want to alert the citizens of Gaza and the Middle East, if you are told to go to a specific region that they consider to be a safe zone, that is what they're doing to you. So protect yourself, protect your families the best you can until we can end this saga in the Middle East. And no matter how many weapons we take away, they transport more. We have been doing this now for months. We have been trying to prevent things for months. We have spent a lot of time over there, and we still have people that are there removing weapons as they come in, and they just keep shipping more and more and more and more because they think they're doing this for a reason.
Now, we've talked about that reason before here on the newscast as well as on this podcast. Wars used to make money. This used to be how militaries got paid, through war. And that is no longer true. We have transitioned from a dark age into a light age. And in a light age, money and war do not go hand in hand. You do not get paid lots of money because you kill people. But the memo hasn't gotten out to all of these people. Or there are people out there that just simply do not care. They are running on a system, on a program, on a plan that is thousands of years old, and it doesn't matter what any new information they receive. They are hell-bent, literally, on taking people out and trying to get as much power and money out of the situation as possible. That's what's happening over in Israel right now. Now, to help spread the truth about what's really happening and how we got to this point, well, now we need to talk about the legions of angels that are here on this planet right now. We've talked about this before. There are 120,000 angels from the 9th density. The 9th density is where God / creator / source exists. Whatever name you have for God, that exists in the 9th density. So these are beings that are right up there with God. Very smart, very knowledgeable beings. And yes, they are on this planet right now to help us during this time. And they have been making the rounds. They have been trying to talk to people. They have, as in our last report, we told you about millions of people that have disappeared from this planet, been sent back to God or source because they were trying to hurt humanity. So they are definitely here trying to help us. Now, there are a group of people, because you take somebody out, I know this sounds horrible, but you take somebody out. So the legions, take someone out because they're harming humanity. And then it's like the buck gets passed to the next person in line. Okay. So this is why it feels like it's been taking so long for things to change, is because, it just gets passed down. So what the legions decided to do is create some sort of video, we can call it a movie if you want, to share with 3,000 to 4,000 people who are now at the top of the food chain, militarily wise, and people, again, have now in control because their boss is gone. And it's a movie of the real history of the world because there is so much misinformation out there about how we got to this point, who's really in charge, why are we doing what we're doing. And so these are not necessarily bad people. They've been given bad information. And as Kim explains, you don't want to just take these people out. First of all, that's not in accordance with natural law. But these people can also be very helpful on the light side in the restoration of our planet. So if it's just because they've been given bad information, well, don't take them out, educate them, and then let them make a call as to whether or not they want to proceed forward and help humanity. If not, there are consequences. So again, 3,000 to 4,000 people were able to view the real history of the world, and about, I think she said maybe 300, 400 of them decided that they were still going to do things their own way. Don't get me started on that. Like the stupidity of some of these people, the ego of some of these people to look at an angel, which by the way, the angels look like humans, but still to basically say, sorry, angels, we're going to do things our own way. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. Those people are being taken out right now. So I think Kim said of the 300, 400, I think 86 or a number like that, less than 100 were still around, and they're still taking people out. So they gave them a chance. They decided to do their own thing, which didn't last very long. Okay. All right. The next thing that I want to talk about is the Leviathan program. So I believe it was our last podcast. We told you more about the releasing of these artificial lower astral entities, and they were released, right? This person in China decided, hey, it'd be a great thing. We're losing this battle. Let's release these horrible things. Remember, we talked about the solar flares. This is all part of the launch of the Leviathan program. And we have more information on that now. Obviously, Kim has been working on this, and there is more to the story. This is a program that has been dormant for 250,000 years on this planet, and it was pretty nefarious. I'll let Kim tell you more about it.
So early Thursday morning began part of this Leviathan program. Mm-hmm. And I kind of explained last week that what we saw was they looked like, I told you, souls in a jar or souls in a box. Yeah. Such a thing. And they were all released. Mm-hmm. Well, they kind of almost looked like these roundish shaped objects with these tentacle looking thingies on them. Okay. And I didn't really think anything of it at the time because it was it was so fast and furious. I'm like, get rid of them, get rid of them. I don't know what they are. I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know how they were released. But the program actually ran a lot deeper than that. Okay. So in the event that the Omegaverse was completely dismantled, this program was due to kick in. Mm-hmm. In the event there were minimal to no parasites on this side of the multiverse with which to feed them with, this program was to kick in. It was not created by source or anti-source. This was a program that was actually created by a group of lower astral beings. Not necessarily the Abraxas, but not to say they weren't involved. The program, if you were to look at the universe as a whole, actually extended through the space in between the fifth and sixth density, and then all the way down below through the fifth and sixth density, and the entire nil zone. So it almost looked like a cross or an X. Now, this was a series of cubes that connected lower astral densities to upper astral densities, but it also extended through into computers. And again, it had remained dormant for almost 250,000 years, so we didn't pick up on the frequency of it until, we started picking up on it on Thursday, and then it kind of accumulated between Friday and Saturday, and there was enough of a bigger picture so that we could actually see it. So each cube had, as all cubes do, 4 transduction filter membrane walls to them. So we really couldn't see beyond it. And it was designed to do a number of different things. And in phase 1, it was designed to insert a consciousness called the Leviathan consciousness, directly into source-based energy particles, also known in science as the God particle, to give it a different instruction set to create something else.
Okay.
Something unnatural. Now, this was further amplified, and I will tell you, there are those, maybe not anymore because they're not with us anymore, but there were those in China and in the United States and in Russia and in several other countries that knew, just because the Wuhan virus, known as the coronavirus, was released from China, does not mean that everybody was not aware. At least in the secret space programs and the higher clearance people in the world were all aware. This is where your spike proteins come in as well. So you remember I told you these creature things they almost looked like spike proteins look like when we see them on the television set. So there was definitely a connection to utilizing the virus to transmit the common cold, any kind of virus will do, to transmit these spike proteins into human beings. Now it gets worse. So this allowed for programmable DNA when such time came for the next levels of the program to come into effect.
Okay.
Now, because it had a connection to all things life force, all things energy, so to speak, meaning the energy in all living things on the planet, it then started to develop, and your DNA and your vessel, it then started to develop these same creature-like things in 0 Point Earth, in connection with some, for lack of a better term, planetary-looking things in the Omegaverse that were nothing but giant factories. So artificial creation of life. The intention, you remember I told you they were attracted to dark matter in humans, and those of the order is where these things were going into, and they were intending to attack those people. Well, they intended to use the energy program in your person, and this was just special for Earth, to then amplify a dark energy within your person, and then you would be also infected by one of these creatures which were growing. There was over almost 10 billion of them in the center of Earth.
Oh my.
How's that for bizarre?
Ugh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
would
that
this have
happened.
impacted everybody, or if you had the virus at some point, like who would this have impacted in humanity?
Humans and animals.
But everybody, or
No,
did you have to catch this during the COVID days?
no, because it found a way through that transduction filter to pierce the membrane of the light energy particle. So you had it in you anyway with a different instruction set. Now, this was not to come into full effect quite yet, but the next phase of it was supposed to be coming this month.
Oh wow.
This program was being administered by remaining members of CyberLife military and, oh dear, 2 other groups. I know. And I don't know if they see these. Okay. What we found also in the last 24 hours is we also found stuck in what we call pockets of time, anti-Pleiadians, I know, and a few
Oh
Abraxas.
boy.
Not a lot, just a few. And they were dormant, so they don't send out a frequency, so we can't see them. They were stuck in a pocket of time, I would say, that was in the foldover when we had the quantum flip a while back.
Okay.
And they became active as Leviathan became more and more active.
Mm.
Apparently, these crazy lower astral folks were in contact in some way, shape, or form with CyberLife and a few others. Okay. And they were the ones guiding them on what to do to continue this program, including the Chinese deep state that unleashed. Yeah. Oh, I know.
So even though they're dormant,
gets worse. Now, do they know the extent of what they were trying to? Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, even though
Yes.
they're dormant, they can make communication.
That's okay.
They can have communication outside.
They were not dormant by Thursday.
Oh, I see. So it's when the Leviathan program kind of kicked in.
We just didn't catch them.
Okay.
So unfortunately, for CyberLife et al., I don't know if it's an ego thing or what it is, but they assume everybody that makes contact with them is their friend. Are they aware of the ultimate end goal of Leviathan? Well, they are now. In other words, they will be here shortly. Did they know about the intended takeover of all beings on planet Earth? I don't know, including them, actually. Maybe they were promised that, they would be in charge or something like that of all of the no longer human beings, et al., and animals. I'm not sure. But anyway, they pretended that this was a good thing, and they played along with the game, allowing for a lot of this stuff to happen. By Sunday afternoon, we were able to recognize them and see them because they wanted to come in to the physical plane of Earth. So we started, or I know I started seeing potential almost wormholes, and it would set off an alarm in the system. And I'm like, what is this? And it was actually a kind of a backhanded way of trying to, A, get my attention, and B, allow permission for this to happen, portraying themselves as good guys. And now I know better. I know the difference between organic life forms and non-organic life forms, and that would have been a no. But it did allow us to find the Leviathan program and all the remnants of it, which we have disabled. Been working on disabling, I should say, since we found it.
Were they really able to do anything during that time? Maybe give some advice to some of these groups, but that was it? That
was it. And they never always remain useful is the terminology you use amongst that crowd, because they would never give them enough information to carry out things by themselves. The ultimate end goal of Leviathan, best that we can tell, because this is 250,000-year-old lower astral being technology that I've never seen before, and even in talking to the council, it was very hard for them to see as well. Best we can all surmise, and we do have some quantum computer experts amongst the bunch that within the council, the Universal Council, that have tried to help, and best we can all come up with together is that this program was actually designed to utilize the life force in human beings to recreate a lower astral to include Earth. That's what it looked like, meaning the gateway would once again be sunken into the Omegaverse and to start to recreate life within the Omegaverse.
Now, as horrible as that sounds, sometimes you just have to take a step back and go, my gosh, they really thought of kind of everything, didn't they? I mean, they're not on our side, so it's a horrible thing. But these dead man switches, I feel like that's what all this is. It's like, hey, if the Earth gets too light, break this glass to save, the Omega system and to bring the Earth back down, to the lower astral. I mean, it's insane. It's crazy. And all this stuff has to be unraveled so that we can move forward with the restoration of our planet. So obviously, that program was bigger than what Kim initially thought last week when we were talking about this. It was much more involved. And again, this is another example of the alternative media throwing something out there, because they were talking about the solar flares, which kind of launched this whole thing. But they were talking about it like a positive thing, like the white hats or whoever, all these solar flares, it's going to be amazing. This is the lie that you get when you listen to those people. And sometimes it's not necessarily the people's fault. They're just getting bad information. They're good people. It's like the people that watch the movie from the Legion of Angels. I mean, they're not necessarily bad people, but they're spreading lies and they're getting people to think that something is a good thing when really it would have led to humanity's demise if that program actually continued and, recreated the Omegaverse, which we have been dismantling now for, oh my gosh, it seems like forever. So anyways, there's so much happening behind the scenes. And I know, in listening to this, especially if this is a first time and, you're just checking out our stuff, it may be like, how on earth could all of this stuff be happening and no one know about it? Which seems crazy, right? But the best types of slaves are people that don't even know that they're slaves. This is why all this was kept under the radar for us. The plans that they had for humanity were horrible. And that's even if we made it out alive, which most of us were not going to make it out alive. But the light side is very strong. And we have the ability to knock down these programs. I'm just amazed every time we discover something and then how quickly we can come together and dismantle something so that it doesn't hurt humanity. So we believe that we're at the end of this, but whatever comes our way, we're just going to keep knocking it down. We hope that the people that were given bad information, we hope that they watch the movie. We hope that they believe us. We hope that they join us, because we could certainly use their help. As for all of you, do your research. Don't just believe us when we tell you something. Go down some rabbit holes. You've got some different terms and things that you can look up. Keep asking questions. Think critically. And if you enjoyed today's show, I encourage you to share it with somebody that you care about, because it's free, right? If you would like to, you can subscribe to UnitedNetwork.tv. Just go to the website. That gives you on-demand access to all of our UNN newscasts, complete world situation reports, as well as health and wellness videos and original series. And if you would like to connect with us, the best way to do that is through Telegram. We have a link. I'll post it below in the description, but it's unitednetwork.news/connect. And that is a page that has links to all of our resources, including our Telegram channels if you want to chat. Okay, this is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.